that war has never been India's choice. We are with.
Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. The Ukrainian capital of Kyiv is under a massive Russian attack, with explosions heard in the city and air defences in action. The military says multiple missiles are being deployed against the capital. The Russian action takes place just 2 days before Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is due to meet President Donald Trump in the United States. The leaders plan to discuss details of a possible accord to settle the nearly 4-year war. Israel becomes the first country to formally recognize Somaliland as an independent state, with Prime Minister Netanyahu promising cooperation in key sectors. Somalia opposes secession, while President Donald Trump says he does not support US recognition of Somaliland. Yemen's internationally recognized government calls on the Saudi-led coalition to take military measures in Hadramawt after strikes and separatist gains. It says the goal is to protect civilians and support government forces in imposing a de-escalation. The UN Secretary-General says attacks on civilians and places of worship are unacceptable and calls for those responsible to be brought to justice. At least 8 worshippers are killed in an explosion at a mosque in a predominantly Alawite area of Homs, claimed by an Islamist group in Syria. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says ties with Russia are strengthened by sharing quote-unquote blood, life and death in the Ukraine war in a New Year message to Vladimir Putin. State media says his message follows Putin's greeting and praising North Korean support and lauding what he calls their invincible friendship. Argentina's Congress approves the 2026 budget, the first under President Javier Milei, including about $102 billion in spending and projecting 5% growth with 10.1% inflation. The plan forecasts a primary surplus of 1.2% of GDP, marking a return to formal budget approval after 2 years of rollovers. French police arrest a man suspected of stabbing 3 women in Paris during year-end festivities. Prosecutors say he is tracked through surveillance footage and his mobile phone before being detained north of the French capital. Now, our top story of the hour. We start in the United States. And US President Donald Trump has accused Democrats of fueling what he calls a hoax over newly discovered files linked to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. In a post on Truth Social, Trump claimed 1 million additional pages of Epstein material had been found. He urged authorities to release names connected to the case, saying Democrats, not Republicans, had ties to Epstein. Trump also said the controversy is distracting the Justice Department from investigating alleged election fraud. The comments follow a Christmas Day post in which Trump said Democrats would have a lot of explaining to do as more Epstein documents are released under a new law passed by Congress. Joining us now is Satoru Nagao, a fellow at the Hudson Institute. He's joining us live from Tokyo. Dr. Nagao, as always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Of course, the Epstein Transparency Act has already not been followed. We were supposed to get all documents last Friday, however, and we were now revealed that 1 million additional documents could be released extremely soon. Donald Trump, of course, not very happy in being questioned by this pretty consistently by journalists as he tries to take hold of the press narrative away from what has been the top story over the past few months. What are your thoughts in him trying to make this a Democrat problem? Of course, leading up to the midterms next year, Democratic figures are involved. You have the likes of Bill Clinton, among others. However, Donald Trump himself has appeared in these fires on multiple occasions, although no admission of guilt or anything like that has been founded. What are your thoughts on Donald Trump's way of tackling this, blaming Democrats, and do you think it's working?
Working or not is controversial, but next year there is a midterm election, so that's why before it, the Republican and Democrat are competing about the image of their party or image of the leader. In case of the Democrat, of course, creating the scandal against President Trump is beneficial for them. But at the same time, in case of the Republicans, it is controversial because of President Trump's popularity is moving. Good time, of course, they try to close the President Trump and appeal the closeness of the President Trump. But if President Trump's popularity is declining, in this case, some Republicans try to take distance from the President Trump's supporter image. So that's why even if the Republicans, there's a possibility their opinion is different. In case of the Epstein file including the many famous people, including both Democrats and Republicans. So that's why this scandal could be the weapon for both Democrats and Republicans indeed. So some cases, Democrats appeal, the President Trump tried to hide something because of the list of the Epstein's customers or something like that, they try to appeal. But at the same time, some famous characters in the Democrats are also joining the party of Epstein, and there's a possibility they are also the customer or something. So that's why how to exploit this politically is the matter, and both sides try to seek the bad image of this Epstein relation as a weapon of the politics is they are seeking and competing just now.
Yes, indeed, Dr. Nagao. Of course, conspiracy theories have become front and center of American politics in this day and age. Do you think this drags the entire US political discourse deeper into that conspiracy-driven rhetoric?
Yeah, conspiracy is some people want to believe this kind of conspiracy theory. So that's, and in this case, the interesting thing is some part of the Trump supporters like this kind of the conspiracy. So that's why if the President Trump is hiding something, such kind of image spread in the United States, who faced more damage as a supporter? In this case, President Trump loses some support from the Trump supporter. That is the reason the Democrats focusing on this issue. So this is a weak point, the critical point. The Democrat side believe it, and they focusing on. But the reality is, indeed, this Epstein's relation with the famous people is including both Republican and Democrats. So that's why which side is more wrong, what side is more close to Epstein. Indeed, it is not easy to identify.
Okay, Dr. Nagao, do stay with us as we move on to our next story. And according to reports, US President Donald Trump has said that he opposed the US recognition of Somaliland after Israeli Prime Minister and prominent Trump ally Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel would become the first country to recognize it. Meanwhile, the African Union has said in a statement that it rejects any recognition of Somaliland. The chairperson of the AU Commission firmly rejects any initiative or action aimed at recognizing Somaliland as an independent entity, recalling that Somaliland remains an integral part of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Read the statement. Somalia has denounced Israel's recognition of its northern region of Somaliland as an independent state, and in a statement, Somalia's foreign ministry said the recognition amounted to a serious breach of international norms. Turkey, a close ally of Somalia, has also criticised Israel's recognition of Somaliland. This comes as Netanyahu announced the formal recognition of Somalia's breakaway region of Somaliland yesterday. Meanwhile, Somaliland's President Rahman Mohammed has expressed his gratitude towards the recognition of the state. Let's listen in to what the two have said.
It's good to talk to you, and before anything else, I want you to know that I'm signing now, as we speak, Israel's official recognition of Somaliland and its right of self-determination. Our friendship is seminal and historic. So I'm very, very happy, and I'm very proud of this day, and I want to wish you and the people of Somaliland the very, very best.
I'm the happiest person in the world today. The historic address on the recognition of the Republic of Somaliland. Excellencies, all world leaders, distinguished delegates, partners, all Somalilanders. Today, I address you at a moment of historic significance for the Republic of Somaliland. After more than 3 decades of peaceful self-governance, constitutional order, and democratic practice, Somaliland has received its first formal international recognition as a sovereign and independent state. This development affirms an objective reality that has long existed. Somaliland meets the legal, political, and institutional criteria of its.
Joining us now is Major General Sudhakar Ji, an international relations and defence expert, joining us live from New Delhi in this discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. What more can you tell us about Somaliland? The tensions between it and Somalia, why this might cause discontent in that region itself?
Thomas, good morning. Thank you for inviting me for your show. Great question you have asked. I would say that one needs to understand the location, the geographical location of Somaliland. And it will be fair on my part to bring to the notice of the audience that once upon a time, it used to be part of Somalia, but it became independent in 1991 because of inter-clan rivalry and oppressive measures by the Somalia government, because of which they felt that they were being deprived of the basic livelihood facilities and they were being denied the freedom, I would say the natural freedom to live in their own land. So ever since then, the Somalia has been claiming that it is a part and parcel of Somalia, and hence its independent status is not to be recognized. So under these circumstances, what is happening is that people need to understand why this great news, international news. The news is that the Palestinians from Gaza have to be shifted to Somaliland, and this is a long drawn objective of USA and Israel. Now, this is being opposed to by many stakeholders, particularly the European stakeholders are in opposition to this particular shifting, because this is going to make a kind of an unprecedented move into a land which is actually has got a status of dispute. So under these circumstances, putting the Gazans there or Palestinians there in Somali Island, they will be left in a lurch. Although we know, you, me and others, we know, those who are keeping in touch with the media, that some of the Palestinians, they have forcibly been shifted to South Africa despite opposition and resistance from South Africa, and there are some movements and shifting taking place in a clandestine manner. But Somali thing is actually going to catch attention and will have lots of resistance, because in USA itself, the Republican who had passed a bill not to recognize Somaliland are the ones who will be contesting the decision. So under these circumstances, it is going to become a huge dispute, and there will be lots of counter arguments, and such a kind of move may not be accepted by the polity of the USA, because it's a divided house in USA itself. As regards Netanyahu, Netanyahu is looking for, it's a strong ally of USA. It is looking for slots where to forcibly shift the Gazans or the Palestinians to new lands. Somaliland happens to be one of them. It is along the coastline, or it is sharing a border with Somalia, and it also has a coastline with the Red Sea. So, and also it is to large an extent, the open media is not bringing out the issues. It has got large number of forces which are inimical and jihadists who are operating across the border between Somalia and Somaliland. So with a kind of a disturbed kind of a situation, shifting Palestinians forcibly is definitely going to put a big question mark in the international rules-based order. Back to you, Thomas.
Yes, indeed. And of course, from Somalia's point of view, how serious is a threat? Is this a threat to its sovereignty?
No, you see, first and foremost thing, it is to be seen and understood from the perspective of Somalia. Somalia does not accept the independence of Somaliland, gained independence in 1991. There have been actually a dispute which is lingering on for a long time, and both the countries, both the neighbors, they are at daggers drawn, and one doesn't accept the other's independence. The other, that is Somaliland, is asserting its independence and the autonomous status, and also asserting its strategic autonomy. So therefore, under the circumstances, I personally feel that this is going to compound the existing problem to a level where the relocation of Palestinians will make very, very problematic. Therefore, unless the environment and the ecosystem is receptive and accepts and welcomes the Palestinians, it will tantamount to throwing the Palestinians to nowhere, where they even cannot claim their stable and a progressive kind of a livelihood in a new country.
Yes, indeed. Major General G, stay with us as we move on to our next question. US President Donald Trump says American strikes he ordered against jihadists in Nigeria have decimated their camps. Trump told Politico the attack was deliberately delayed to Christmas Day, calling it a surprise blow. Washington says the strike targeted Islamic State-linked militants accused of attacking Christian communities, and Nigeria confirmed it approved the joint operation, stressing it was not aimed at any religion. A US official says about a dozen Tomahawk missiles were fired from a Navy warship because the area was too remote for Nigerian forces. Local media reported explosions, but casualties remain unconfirmed. Security analysts say the strike may be largely symbolic, warning it is unlikely to weaken Islamic groups without sustained action. The operation follows Trump's earlier threat of unilateral US action to protect Christians in Nigeria. Major General G, of course, Nigeria says it did approve this strike. Does that make this fully legitimate under international law?
A quick answer to your question is, Thomas, no. There is a big no to this. But if you have time, I would like to dilate and explain. And otherwise, the answer is no, certainly not. Although Nigeria is supporting the US action, in fact, it is in the open media that they have approved the US airstrike against the jihadist or the ISIS corridor in Nigeria. But the larger picture has to be understood. The larger picture is that the northern part of Nigeria is dominated by the Christians, and overall percentage being 46 to 48% of Christians in Nigeria, they have equal percentage of Islam or the Muslims. So it's a multi-diverse multi-religious kind of a society, and Muslims are around 46 to 50%, very marginal, little higher than that of the Christians. And the Islamic problem has to be understood from the perspective of 2017, when the Western alliances led by USA forces, they claimed that they had broken or decimated the ISIS caliphate of 262 kilometers across Syria and Iraq. Consequent to the claimed decimation, the whatever remnant of ISIS were present, they broke up into splinter groups. They shifted. One group shifted to Northwest Africa, which willy-nilly they gravitated towards the corridor called as Sahel region, and Nigeria is bordering the Sahel corridor, which comprises of 10 countries, and they have in past 10 to 15 years or so, past 8 to 10 years or so, they have got entrenched and they are intimidating. They are carrying out blatant open day attacks against the Christians. They are abducting people. There is an extrajudicial killing, and likewise. So therefore, their footprint and dominance in the corridor, which is bordering Nigeria northern portion, is pretty high. So under these circumstances, one odd airstrike by USA, although they have used Tomahawk and they claim that they have hit a number of targets, is not going to reduce the problem. Rather, it will make the ISIS as an organization, shore up their confidence and galvanize their effort and continue to attack the Christians. So therefore, what is it that I'm trying to highlight? I'm trying to highlight, more than this, a multi-pronged approach has to be there, wherein talks, diplomacy and dialogue also has to be talked out. And number two, there is a requirement of a continued support and the presence of USA. Unfortunately, USA
Yes.
doesn't seem to be present there in the corridor. So therefore, there is a requirement of continuity of the mowing the grass, the Israeli concept of every 3 months, 6 months, you got to keep targeting. Also, keep your window and openings open for communication and dialogue. That perhaps will actually take
Yeah.
us to a better and effective solution.
Yes, Major General G, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you on the program, of course. But we have some breaking news coming in from Southeast Asia. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to halt weeks of intense border fighting, the worst clashes between the two neighbours in years. The ceasefire took effect today at noon, with both sides committing to keep current troop positions and avoid reinforcements. The agreement was signed by the defence ministers of both countries after nearly 3 weeks of fighting that killed more than 100 people and displaced more than 500,000 civilians. Okay, we of course will continue to bring you all the developments when it comes to that. Huge development there coming out of Southeast Asia. But we move on and over to the east, and China has recently announced a new round of sanctions targeting US defense companies and executives. This move that escalates tensions with Washington over arms sales to Taiwan. Beijing's foreign ministry has said that these sanctions apply to 10 individuals and 20 US defense firms, including Boeing St. Louis Defense Unit and Northrop Grumman Systems Corporation and L3 Harris Maritime Services. These measures freeze any assets held in China and prohibit Chinese organizations and individuals from doing business with the listed entities. Those named are also barred from entering China, and these sanctions follow Washington's announcement that came last week on an $11.1 billion arms package for Taiwan, which happens to be the largest US weapons sale to the island in history. China's foreign ministry has warned that any actions crossing what it calls a red line in the US-China relations would face a firm response. Beijing has urged the United States to halt its efforts to arm the island. Meanwhile, the United States has too pushed back strongly. A State Department spokesman added that US policy towards Taiwan has remained consistent across 9 administrations and is intended to preserve peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. Joining us now is Dr. Satoru Nagao, once again a fellow at the Hudson Institute, joining us live from Tokyo. What more can you tell us about this development? Of course, we saw that huge arms sale to Taiwan just a few days ago now, and China seemed to have responded rather harshly.
Yes, the US-China competition is still ongoing. We reconfirmed that kind of situation just now. Because supporting Taiwan, the US has imposed. So even if in the national security strategy or remark of the President Trump did not mention to defend Taiwan so clearly, despite this, indeed, the U.S. Trump administration hasn't stopped any support to Taiwan. Especially the Taiwan defense, this arms export was relatively big and effective weapons. So that's why the U.S. will protect Taiwan is very clear. And in this case, the China side also hasn't stopped the retaliation always. And recently, not only the retaliation, but also they are pushing some critical points, such as the rare restriction to export or something like that is also China imposed. So China does not think the US-China competition will end soon. China is expecting it will be escalate in the future, and so that's why China does not need to stop this provocation against the United States. And the view from China, this of course U.S. will not stop the provocation, they believe. And the U.S., because of such kind of the attitude of China, there is no reason for the United States to support Taiwan or other allies in front of China. So that's why U.S.-China competition is naturally escalating step by step, and this is the situation, I think.
Yes, Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for taking the time. We move on now and over to the United States once again, and New York is moving to curb the impact of social media on young users. Governor Kathy Hochul says performs with infinite scroll, autoplay and algorithm-driven feeds must now carry warning labels about potential mental health harm. The law targets what it calls addictive design features and allows the state attorney general to take action. Companies could face civil penalties of up to $5,000 per violation. The rules apply to activities that take place partly or entirely in New York State. Hochul compares the labels to warnings on tobacco and plastic packaging. The move follows similar steps in states like California and Minnesota and comes amid growing global concern over children's mental health and online harms. We have some breaking news coming as well, but this time out of Japan, and a massive pile-up on a Japanese highway has killed 1 person and injured 26 amid snowy weather. The crash began when 2 trucks collided in Minakami, Gunma Prefecture, around 160 kilometers northwest of Tokyo. Over 50 vehicles were involved and a fire spread to a dozen cars, but caused no injuries and was extinguished within 7 hours. Parts of the expressway remained closed as authorities clear the wreckage and investigate. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.